My husband emptied our joint account on a Tuesday morning, left me $2,300, and told me to be grateful he was not the kind of man who abandons a woman with nothing. He said it while standing in our kitchen in Lake Forest, wearing the navy cashmere coat I had bought him for our 14th anniversary, rolling his suitcase across the white oak floor my father had chosen before he died. The rain outside made the windows look silver. The coffee in my hand had gone cold 20 minutes earlier, but I kept holding it because I needed something ordinary to touch while Grant performed the debt off our marriage like a closing statement. He had always loved speeches. "I'm not trying to punish you, Nora," he said, glancing at his phone for the 6th time. "But I can't keep carrying both of us. You're a talented illustrator, sure, but talent doesn't pay the mortgage. On a place like this." I looked at the crown molding, the marble counters, the old brass pendants, the framed watercolor of a fox in a winter coat that hung by the breakfast nook. One of my little drawings, as he liked to call them, that one had sold at auction for more than the SUV he was about to drive to his girlfriend's apartment. "You drained the account," I said. "I moved marital funds into a protected account until the divorce is final." My attorney said it was standard. His attorney was a 31-year-old paralegal named Tessa Vale who had promoted herself in Grant's imagination from legal assistant to soulmate. She worked at the boutique family law firm he had chosen because, according to him, I needed guidance from professionals. I had found her name on a dinner receipt first. Then on hotel invoices. Then in the late-night phone. Records he forgot were still billed through a family plan I had set up 9 years earlier. Grant thought I was slow because I was quiet. That had always been his favorite mistake. "You left me $2,300, I said. "For the first month," he replied. "Utilities, groceries, gas. You'll be fine if you're careful." Behind him, his mother stood in the entryway holding a cardboard box as if she were helping a college kid move out of a dorm. Brenda had a face built for judgment. She looked around my kitchen with the same sour expression she wore the first time she visited, back when she asked me whether I caught Grant by pretending to be helpless. "Nora, honey," Brenda said, and somehow made honey sound like a stain. "Don't turn this into one of your dramatic little scenes. Grant has worked very hard. If he's found happiness, you should let him have it." My laugh came out softer than I expected. "Happiness is what we're calling it?" Grant's jaw tightened. "Tessa has nothing to do with this." The front door opened before I could answer. Tessa walked in without knocking, shaking rain off a beige trench coat that cost more than her weekly paycheck. She had dark hair pulled into a sleek bun, red nails, and the bright, polished confidence of a woman who believed she had just won a prize. On her left wrist was a gold bracelet I recognized from a charge on Grant's card. My card, technically. He had used it because his business account was being reviewed. Tessa paused when she saw me. Not from shame. From irritation. "Grant, the broker just texted," she said. "If we didn't wire the deposit by 5, we lose the condo." Brenda gave her a warm smile, the kind she had never wasted on me. Grant's face flushed. "Tess, wait in the car. I'm not a secret anymore," she said, lifting her chin. "No, I thought. You are evidence." Grant dragged a hand through his hair. He was still handsome in the clean, expensive way of men who had never been told no by anyone who mattered to them. At 46, he had the practiced confidence of a wealth advisor who could say market volatility and make people hand him their life savings. He had built his whole life on sounding certain. He turned back to me. "The papers are straightforward. You keep the house for now. I keep my retirement accounts, my professional assets, and the funds I moved. We sell whatever needs to be sold later. No court circus. No public embarrassment." "For whom?" I asked. His eyes hardened. "Don't be ugly. I'm offering you dignity," he said. "You're offering me my own kitchen and $2,300. Tessa sighed. This is exactly why he didn't want to tell you in person. I turned my head slowly. "I'm sorry. Did the woman who walked into my house to collect my husband just complain about my manners?" Her cheeks went pink. Brenda stepped forward. "Enough," she snapped. "Grant, go. She'll only twist this. Women like Nora always do. Quiet for years, then suddenly wounded when a man finally gets tired of carrying them. Carrying me." I looked at Grant. "Is that what you think you did?" He avoided my eyes. "I think I gave you a good life." He had given me a good life. But I only said, "Then thank you." That unsettled him more than screaming would have. He searched my face, looking for the collapse he had rehearsed. Tears, pleading, maybe a shaking hand reaching for his sleeve. Instead, I lifted my coffee and took a sip. It was bitter. And cold. Tessa shifted in the doorway. "Grant, we really do need to go." He picked up his leather duffel. I had monogrammed it GM for Grant Mercer. He had once joked that the letters also stood for Great Man. I had laughed then because I was still in the habit of rewarding him for being ridiculous. At the threshold, he looked back. You'll sign by Friday. No, I said. He blinked. What? I said no. Brenda made a sharp little sound. Tessa stared at me as if I had broken a rule she had not known I was allowed to touch. Grant stepped back into the kitchen. Nora, don't start a fight you can't afford. I set the mug down. For 15 years, you have told everyone I don't understand money, I said. So explain this to Mesley. If you already moved the funds, already hired the lawyer, already found the condo, already brought your girlfriend to my front door, why do you still need me to sign anything by Friday? His mouth opened. Closed. There it was, quick as lightning, fear. Not guilt. Not regret. Fear. He covered it with anger. Because I'm trying to keep this civil. No, I said. You're trying to keep it quiet. Tessa's expression changed before Grant's did. She was not stupid. Greedy, maybe. Careless, definitely. But not stupid. She looked from him to me, then back again, and for the first time I saw a crack in her victory. Grant grabbed the handle of his suitcase. We're done. Yes, I said. Where? He walked out. Brenda followed, muttering something about unstable women. Tessa lingered for half a second, eyes narrowed, as if trying to decide whether I was pathetic or dangerous. Ismail Dahia. She left faster after that. I waited until the headlights disappeared. Through the iron gates. I waited until the sound of tires on wet gravel faded, then I stood in my kitchen, alone in the house that everyone thought Grant allowed me to keep, and let the silence return to its rightful owner. I did not cry. Not then. I walked upstairs to the studio he hated because it smelled like paint, paper, and old lady dust. He had never looked closely at that room. My drawing table sat beneath the north window. A half-finished sketch of a raccoon in rain boots lay beside jars of brushes and sharpened pencils. To the left of the shelves was a framed charcoal portrait of my father, Arthur Whitmore, smiling the way he smiled when he knew he had already won but wanted you to enjoy catching up. I pressed 2 fingers against the lower corner of the frame. A soft click sounded inside the wall. The bookshelf slid open. Behind. It was not a storage closet. It was a reinforced private office with a biometric lock, 3 secure phones, a wall of monitors, and a direct encrypted terminal connected to Whitmore Group's legal, banking, and risk systems. My father had built the first version after my mother died and reporters started camping outside our school. I had rebuilt it 3 years into my marriage, after I overheard Grant at a charity dinner telling another advisor that he was lucky I was pretty, loyal, and financially harmless. Financially harmless. I sat down at the console and placed my thumb in the scanner. The screen lit up with a blue-white glow. Welcome, Eleanor Whitmore. Grant never knew because Grant never asked the right question. Head hot, the prenup protected him. That was the funniest part. I opened the domestic asset dashboard. Grant had moved $74,218 from the household operating account over the past 36 hours. He had wired a deposit for a luxury condo in River North. He had placed a hold on a Range Rover. He had paid for jewelry, hotel rooms, and something labeled consulting retainer to an LLC registered 12 days earlier in Delaware. I leaned closer, the LLC name made the air change. Vale Bridge Strategies. Tessa. My husband had not just left me for his mistress. He had started moving money through her. I opened an encrypted message window and typed to Marcus Reed, General Counsel for Whitmore Group and the only man on earth who could make silence feel expensive. He left. Activate Icarus. His response came in 9 seconds. Confirmed. Do we let him run? I looked at the screen showing Grant's pending wire for the condo. I pictured him in some champagne-lit sales office, telling Tessa the hard part was over. For 72 hours, I typed. Let him think he won. Marcus replied with 3 words. With great pleasure. I closed the terminal and finally let myself breathe. Downstairs, somewhere in the house, a pipe clicked. Rain kept tapping the windows. My phone buzzed with a text from Grant. Don't make this ugly, Nora. I read it twice. Then I typed back the only warning I planned to give him. You made it ugly when you mistook mercy for weakness. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. No answer came. That was fine. By the time Grant realized what I had meant, every door he had opened with my money would be locking behind him. The next morning, I walked into Whitmore Tower in downtown Chicago wearing my real name like a blade. By the time the elevator reached the 54th floor, Marcus was waiting with Diane Shaw, my personal attorney, and Julian Cross from Communications. Behind them stood my assistant from another life, Paula, who had worked for my father before she worked for me. She was 68 now, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and still capable of making billionaires feel late to class. Paula looked at me for 1 second, then opened her arms. I stepped into them. "Welcome back, Ellie," she whispered. "Thank you," I said. Marcus cleared his throat gently. "The boardroom is ready." The first meeting lasted 4 hours. Grant had imagined divorce as a private transaction, a few signatures, a few humiliations, a new woman in a new condo, and me alone in a big house figuring out which bills to pay first. He had not imagined forensic accountants. He had not imagined risk officers. He had not imagined that the accounts he called ours were structured as household operate authorized user limits, separation triggers, fraud flags, and a marital conduct clause he had signed 11 years earlier after skimming the first page and declaring, "Legal stuff all sounds the same." Diane placed the signed documents in front of me. He acknowledged separate property, family trusts, legacy assets, and controlled entities. He waived claims to assets not commingled by written agreement. He also agreed that any extraordinary transfer during marital dissolution would trigger review. Julian whistled. "That is not a prenup, that is a bear trap in a silk bag." "My father had trust issues," I said. Marcus looked at the dashboard. "Grant spent $91,000 since Monday morning." "He only moved $74,218, I said. "He used 2 cards linked to the household account before the restriction window opened." "Where?" Marcus read from the screen. "River North Condo Deposit. Vehicle reservation, jewelry. Dinner at Maple and Ash. Hotel suite. A payment to Vale Bridge Strategies. Another payment coded as strategic consulting to North Pier Advisory." I turned. "North Pier?" Diane's expression sharpened. "That is new. Find it." Marcus nodded to an analyst at the far end of the table, already running. Julian slid a folder toward me. "Public." Sighed. "We prepared 3 versions. The cleanest says you are returning as active chair of Whitmore Group after a long creative sabbatical. No mention of Grant. No mention of the divorce. We let the financial press do what they do best. Speculate, I said. Exactly. Diane studied me. Once your name is public again, Grant loses the protection of ignorance. He may get desperate. He has been desperate for years, I said. He just called it ambition. At 2 p.m. the next day, the first lock engaged. I watched from the boardroom as Grant's access cards changed from active to restricted. The accounts did not vanish. They simply stopped obeying him. The pending condo wire moved into review. The Range Rover hold failed. The linked cards froze. The domestic account generated a notice requiring dual authorization from me and a trust officer. At 2:06, Grant called the bank. At 2:11, he called again and demanded a supervisor. At 2:24, he attempted a wire from his business account to cover the condo deposit. At 2:31, that account triggered a collateral review because the original line of credit was backed by guarantees he did not own. At 3:08, he texted me. "What did you do?" I did not answer. At 3:19, he texted again. "Nora, pick up the phone. This is childish." Still. No answer. At 3:42, he tried to withdraw cash at a branch in River North. A security note appeared on the dashboard. Client agitated. Raised voice. Left premises. Paula, who had been standing behind me with a cup of tea, made a satisfied sound. "I never liked him," she said. "You told me you did." "I lied for your peace." By 7 o'clock that night, Grant was calling every 4 minutes. I let the phone vibrate on the conference table. Until Diane reached over and turned it face down. "He is trying to make you respond emotionally," she said. "Do not give him the cheapest thing he wants." The next morning, Julian's release went live at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. By 6:45, the financial sites had picked it up. By 7:10, my photograph was everywhere as Eleanor Whitmore returns to lead family powerhouse after 15-year creative retreat. The accompanying image showed me at 28, standing beside my father after a Senate banking hearing. I looked young, tired, and furious at the cameras. Grant had once seen that photo in an old storage box and asked why I had a picture with some politician's daughter. At 7:22, my phone lit up with his name. At 7:23, again. At 7:25, he left a voicemail. I played it on speaker because Marcus, Diane, Julian, and Paula were already looking at me. "Nora. Eleanor. Whatever you're calling yourself now. Call me back. Right now. You don't get to hide billions from your husband and then act like I did something wrong. I gave you 15 years. You owe me a conversation." Paula's eyebrows rose. Diane wrote something on her legal pad. Marcus looked almost entertained. He said billions. That was fast. Grant arrived at the Lake Forest house at 8:40. I watched through the security feed from my office downtown. He parked badly, half on the circular drive, half on the grass. He looked like a man wearing yesterday's confidence after sleeping in it. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair stuck up at the back. He pounded on the front door with the side of his fist. "Open the door," he shouted. "I know you're in there." I was not in there, but I appreciated the drama. The head of me residential security team, Owen Bell, stepped onto the porch. "Mr. Mercer, Ms. Whitmore is not available." Grant jabbed a finger at him. "That is my wife. Your divorce petition states otherwise. This is my home." Owen did not blink. "Property records disagree." Grant turned toward the camera beside the door. For a second, it thought he would apologize. Not because he meant it, but because panic had finally dragged him near reality. Instead, he leaned close to the lens and said, "You lied to me for 15 years. I whispered to the screen, "No, Grant. You underestimated me for 15 years. By noon, the call shifted. His attorney called Diane. "Brenda called me from 3 different numbers. Grant's business partner left a message so polite it sounded like a hostage note. Tessa did not call. That surprised me. At 2:15, Paula knocked on the open boardroom door. "There is a Tessa Vale. Downstairs. She says she has information." In 17 minutes before Grant realizes she is not at her apartment. The room went quiet. Diane said, "Absolutely not." Marcus said, "Absolutely yes, with recording." I looked at Paula. "Is she alone?" "Very." I had imagined Tessa in perfect makeup, chin high, still clinging to the fantasy that she had chosen the winning side. The woman who walked into the 54th floor conference room looked 10 years older than the one who had stood in my doorway. Her bun was loose. Her lipstick was gone. Rain had darkened the shoulders of her coat. She carried a laptop bag against her chest like a shield. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said before anyone offered her a chair. "I'm here because I will not go to prison for a man who lied to me too." Diane's pen stopped. I gestured to the chair. "Sit down." Tessa sat but did not relax. She looked at the recording device in the center off the table. "Good. Record it. I want a record." "You have 17 minutes, I said. "I probably have less." She opened her laptop bag and removed an encrypted drive. Her hands were shaking. "Grant told me you were separated. He said you lived in the house because he felt sorry for you. He said the money he moved was his. He said you had emotional issues and might try to punish him." "I see." Her face crumpled for half a second, then hardened. "I believed what benefited me. I'm not going to pretend I was innocent. But 2 weeks ago, he asked me to notarize something outside normal procedure. A spousal consent form. It had your signature." Diane leaned forward. "For what?" "A bridge loan against the Lake Forest property." Tessa pushed the drive toward me. "I did not notarize it. But someone did. I made a copy because the signature looked wrong. Then I found folders on Grant's laptop. Client transfer schedules, consulting payments. Shell companies. North Pier Advisory. Vale Bridge Strategies. He put my name on one without telling me. I thought it was for the condo paperwork. It was not." "Why bring this to us?" Marcus asked. "Because Grant told me this morning that if things go bad, he can prove I handled the documents." Tessa swallowed. "He said nobody would believe the mistress over the wife or the advisor. Then he said if I loved him, I would stop acting scared." There was no triumph in her voice now. No sign. Just the ugly education of discovering that a man who humiliates one woman can always make room for another. I looked at the drive. "What do you want?" "My career is probably dead," she said. "But I want protection if I cooperate. And I want my name taken off anything forged." Diane said, "We make no promises before review." "I know." Then Tessa looked at me, really looked, without the doorway smugness. "He kept calling you simple. Sweet. Clueless. I thought he was being affectionate. Yesterday, when your picture was on every financial site, he threw a glass at the wall and said you had tricked him into looking poor." Paula made a sound of disgust behind me. Tessa continued. "That was when I realized he did not love me more than you. He just thought I made him feel bigger for less work." The first forensic scan of the drive took 6 hours. By midnight, we had enough to know Grant was in more trouble than divorce. He had redirected small client overages into consulting entities. He had used pending investment allocations to float personal expenses. He had created shell companies with names clean enough to sound boring. He had drafted a fraudulent loan package against my house, likely hoping to trap me in emergency liquidity pressure and force a sale before I could challenge him. But the worst file sat 3 folders deep under a label called Family Settlement. Inside was a draft affidavit stating that he had concealed mental instability, abandoned marital financial responsibilities, and required supervised management offsets due to erratic behavior. It named Brenda as a supporting witness. It named Tessa as administrative witness. It included an unsigned petition asking the court to freeze my access to the house and appoint Grant temporary financial manager over disputed marital property. He had not just planned to take money. He had planned to make me look unfit to own my own life. At 12:48 a.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. Marcus nodded once before I answered on speaker. Grant's voice came through low and rough. You think you're clever? I stared at the city lights beyond the boardroom glass. I think I'm awake. You ruined me today. No. Today was the calendar doing its job. You hid who you were. You ignored who he was. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You have no idea what people will believe about a woman who lies for 15 years. I was your husband. I can tell them things. Diane silently slid a notepad toward me. Keep him talking. What things, Grant? I asked. That you're unstable. That you live in that house talking to dead people through paintings. That you vanish for days into that creepy studio. That you manipulated me. That you used money to control me. My hand tightened around the phone. He lowered his voice. Sign the agreement. Release enough funds for the condo and my professional accounts. I keep my business clean. You keep your little secret life from turning into a tabloid disease. Marcus's face changed at the word disease. I thought of the affidavit. Brenda, the forged signature. The loan. The shell accounts. The way he had stood in my kitchen and called $2,300 dignity. You should be very careful with the next thing you say, I told him. Or what? I looked at the forensic report on the table. Or Tessa will not be the only person who decides survival matters more than loyalty. Silence. When Hess spoke again, the anger had drained into something thinner. What did she give you? I did not answer. Nora. There it was again. The small name. The wife name. The name he could manage. My name is Eleanor, I said. And tomorrow morning, you will learn what happens when Amon builds a trap with stolen rope. I hung up before he could respond. At 1:03 a.m., Marcus's analyst found the final file. A payment authorization to North Pier Advisory for $300,000, scheduled for Friday, marked as divorce transition consulting. The beneficiary behind North Pier was not Tessa. It was Grant's mother. Brenda had not been standing in my entryway to support her son. She had been waiting for her cut. The preliminary divorce hearing took place on a gray Thursday in Cook County, in a courtroom that smelled like old wood, printer toner, and the kind of fear expensive people try to cover with cologne. Grant arrived in a dark suit with Brenda on one side and his attorney on the other. He looked better than he had on my porch, which meant someone had told him panic photographed poorly. Brenda wore pearls and a black dress, as if attending the funeral of my reputation. She did not look at me until I sat down. Then she smiled. It was a small smile. A mother's smile, if the mother had sharpened at first. I arrived with Diane, Marcus, for binders, and knouting ring. Grant noticed the ring before anything else. His face tightened, and for one strange second I saw the man I had married. Just Grant, wounded that something he had thrown away no longer belonged to him. Then the second passed. His attorney stood first. She argued that I had committed marital deception by concealing extensive assets, that Grant had been financially disadvantaged by my secrecy, that the funds he moved were reasonable protective measures after discovering instability and betrayal. She used the word instability 4 times. On the 5th, Diane stood. Your Honor, opposing counsel appears to be confusing privacy with fraud, and disappointment with legal injury. The judge, a woman with silver glasses and no patience for theater, looked over the file. Proceed. Diane did not perform. She never had to. She placed documents in the record one by one, our prenuptial agreement, signed 11 days before the wedding, Grant's acknowledgement of separate inherited assets, Grant's waiver of claims to family trusts, Grant's consent to structured domestic accounts, Grant's agreement that extraordinary transfers during separation would require review. The judge looked at Grant. Mr. Mercer, is that your signature? Grant leaned toward his attorney. She whispered something. He swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. On each document? Yes, but I did not understand the full scope of what she was hiding. Diane turned a page. Mr. Mercer held himself out professionally as a wealth advisor at the time of signing, correct? Grant's attorney objected. The judge allowed it. Grant's jaw flexed. Yes. Diane continued. And he now asks this court to believe that a licensed financial professional signed multiple asset disclosures, waivers, and account authorizations without understanding that his wife had separate assets. I trusted my wife, Grant snapped. I spoke anyway, softly enough that only our table and Grant heard it. No. You trusted your opinion of me. Grant's eyes cut to mine. For the first time in years, I did not look away. The judge reviewed the emergency request Grant had filed at 4:12 that morning. It included claims about my secret room, my supposed emotional instability, my erratic control over household finances, and Brenda's statement that I had long been detached from reality. Reading it in a courtroom made it uglier and smaller at the same time. Lies often shrink under fluorescent light. Diane waited until the judge finished. Your Honor, we have reason to believe Mr. Mercer's emergency petition is not a protective measure but part of a coercive financial scheme. We are submitting evidence under seal regarding attempted unauthorized debt against Ms. Whitmore's separate property, forged spousal consent documents, and suspicious transfers through entities connected to Mr. Mercer and his mother. Brenda's smile vanished. Grant's attorney turned toward him so fast her chair squeaked. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Mercer, are there pending financial transfers involving your mother? Grant looked at Brenda. That was all the answer the room needed. His attorney stood. Your Honor, I request a recess to consult with my client. Diane said, we do not object. I almost admired Grant's ability to choose the wrong expression. He should have looked confused. Instead, he looked betrayed, as if the evidence had broken a promise be existing. During the recess, we waited in a side conference room. I could hear muffled voices through the wall. Grant's first. Then Brenda's. Then his attorney's, sharper than both. Marcus checked his phone. Regulatory counsel is in the building. Diane nodded. Good. I looked at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me. I had imagined this moment for 3 days, 15 years, maybe my whole adult life. I thought revenge would feel hot. It did not. It felt exact. When we returned, the judge issued temporary orders restricting Grant from accessing, transferring, pledging, borrowing against, or representing any interest in my separate property or Whitmore-linked accounts. She ordered preservation off records. She ordered review of the disputed transfers. She warned both parties against public statements. Grant stared at the table. Brenda stared at me. I knew her look. It was the same one she had given me in my kitchen. You were supposed to be small. You were supposed to be manageable. You were supposed to lose politely. After court, Grant followed me into the hallway despite his attorney trying to stop him. You think this makes you innocent? He hissed. You lied every day. I turned. The hallway was crowded with lawyers, clerks, strangers pretending not to listen. I made myself smaller because I loved you, I said. You made me smaller because you loved yourself. His face twisted. You humiliated me. No, I said. You built a life where the truth could humiliate you. That is not my fault. Brenda stepped between us. You cold little fraud. Diane moved, but I lifted a hand. Brenda's makeup was perfect, her eyes were not. Behind the pearls and black dress was pure fury, the kind that comes when entitlement meets a locked door. You sat at my Thanksgiving table for years, she said. You let my son think he was the provider. I let your son think whatever helped him sleep. You trapped him. I leaned closer. Brenda, you filed a sworn statement calling me unstable while accepting a scheduled $300,000 payment from a shell company connected to Grant's stolen client funds. I would choose my next sentence like it costs money. The color left her face. Grant looked at her. What payment? He said. And there it was, another crack. For all his lies, Grant had not known everything. Brenda had negotiated her own side payment through North Pier, using his scheme as her retirement plan. The mother who cried about her son's happiness had been stealing from the thief. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, we were in a private conference room at Whitmore Tower with Grant, his attorney, Brenda, her newly summoned attorney, Diane, Marcus, 2 regulatory representatives, and a forensic accountant whose calm voice made every number sound fatal. Tessa joined by video from an undisclosed office. She had agreed to cooperate in exchange for limited protection pending verification of her role. Her face appeared on the screen pale but composed. Grant would not look at her. Marcus began with the attempted loan. A $1.2 million bridge note secured against the Lake Forest property using a forged spousal consent form. The notary stamp belonged to a woman in Indiana who had reported it stolen 5 months earlier. The submitted signature was mine, copied badly from a charity document. The funds were intended to satisfy Grant's business shortfalls, complete the condo purchase, and create a cash reserve before the divorce discovery period. Grant denied knowing the signature was forged. Then Marcus played the call. Grant's voice filled the room, recorded 9 days earlier. She never checks property filings. Just get it through preliminary review. Once the divorce is filed, I can argue she knew. Nora signs anything if you put enough pages in front of her. No one moved. The recording ended. Grant looked at Tessa's face on the screen. You recorded me? Tessa's voice was flat. You threatened me. You were part of it. I was stupid, she said. I am trying not to be criminal. Then came the client transfers. Small amounts skimmed from advisory allocations, hidden under timing differences, reimbursed occasionally to make the records look like clerical adjustments, consulting fees routed to North Pier Advisory and Vale Bridge Strategies, personal expenses coded as client development. A pattern going back 19 months, the forensic accountant showed the totals. $684,000. Confirmed. $1.7 million under review. Grant's attorney closed her eyes. Brenda's attorney asked for a break. Marcus said no. Finally, Diane placed a settlement framework on the table. Not a negotiation. A door. Grant could walk through it, or we could open every file to regulators, civil courts, professional licensing boards, and, if necessary, prosecutors. Either way, Midivorce would move forward without him touching the house, the trusts, the company, or my name. Grant stared at the papers. What do you want from me? I want every dollar returned to the proper accounts, I said. I want full cooperation with the forensic review. I want the divorce finalized under the agreements you signed. I want confidentiality around Miprivate life. I want you to stop using my old name like a leash. And I want you to admit, in writing, that you knowingly misrepresented my condition, my finances, and my conduct to gain leverage. Hell at once, bitterly. And if I refuse? Marcus slid another folder forward. It contained the affidavit Grant had prepared. Brenda's statement. The shell payments. The forged loan package. The client schedules. The recording. Then, Marcus said, we stopped keeping your disaster organized. Grant looked at his mother. Brenda would not look back. Grant signed the preliminary cooperation agreement at 6:17 p.m. Brenda refused until her attorney spoke to her in the hallway for 14 minutes. When she returned, her lipstick had bled slightly into the lines around her mouth. She signed without looking up. Tessa signed a sworn statement the next morning. The divorce took 5 more weeks to finalize. He lost the condo before he ever slept there. The Range Rover went back to inventory. His advisory license was suspended pending investigation. Several clients filed claims. His business partner cut him loose with a statement. Sockley and Julian said it deserved a frame. Brenda sold her condo in Scottsdale. Took over legal exposure she insisted was temporary. She left me one voicemail, 2 minutes and 11 seconds of accusation, sobbing, and threats. Diane saved it in a folder labeled sentimental nonsense. Tessa left Chicago. I do not know where she went. Before she disappeared, she sent me a short email. You were right to smile at me in the doorway. I thought it meant you were weak. Now I know it meant you saw the ending before I saw the room. I never answered. Forgiveness is not a vending machine. You do not insert confession and receive peace. But I did ask Marcus to confirm her cooperation was noted accurately. That was not mercy. It was fairness. I had learned the difference the hard way. As for Grant, he received enough in the final divorce to live quietly if he learned how. He did not receive enough to impress anyone. That, I suspected, would hurt him more than poverty. Men like Grant do not fear empty rooms. They fear rooms where no one turns to look. The public never got the scandal he threatened to sell. Julian released only what was necessary: my return to Whitmore Group, routine leadership restructuring, a foundation initiative for financial literacy among divorced and widowed women. The rest stayed sealed, waiting like a storm behind glass. Every time Grant's attorney tested the boundaries, Diane sent a reminder letter with one attachment and no adjectives. He stopped testing. First, I slept through a whole night. Then I moved Grant's suits out of the closet and donated the ones without legal holds. Then I took down the photograph from our wedding where he was laughing and I was looking up at him as if the sun had learned my name. For a while, I stood there holding the silver frame, trying to hate the woman in the picture for not knowing better. I could not. She had wanted love. That was not a crime. On a Saturday morning in late October, I reopened my studio. Dust floated in the window light. The raccoon in rain boots waited on the drawing table, patient as all unfinished things are patient. I sat down, picked up a pencil, and drew for 3 hours without checking a single market update. When I finished, the raccoon had one paw on a tiny umbrella and the suspicious expression of someone about to cross a flooded street anyway. I named him Grant. Then I laughed so hard I had to put the pencil down. Paula visited that afternoon with soup and a stack of board documents. She pretended the soup was the reason. I pretended to believe her. We ate at the kitchen island where Grant had left me $2,300 and called it kindness. Are you keeping the house? She asked. I looked around. The kitchen no longer felt like the place where he left. It felt like a room waiting for better memories. Yes, I said. But I'm changing. The locks and the lighting. Good. The lighting was always too flattering to him. That evening, after Paula left, I poured a glass of bourbon from a bottle Grant had claimed was too strong for me. He had believed I liked sweet wine because he once ordered it for me and I did not correct him. That was how much of our marriage had worked. He made a claim, I got tired, the claim became fact. I carried the glass to the terrace. Lake Michigan was a dark line beyond the trees. The air smelled like wet leaves and cold stone. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked at nothing important. For the first time in years, the quiet around me did not feel like waiting. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was a photograph of a handwritten letter. Eleanor, I keep trying to decide when you became a stranger, and the answer that scares me is that you never did. I was the stranger. I lived beside a woman I never bothered to meet because the version in my head served me better. I do not expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now that you did not hide your worth from me. I refused to see it because seeing it would have me deem smaller. There was no signature, but I knew his handwriting. Grant pressed too hard on capital letters. I read it. Once. Then again. For 15 years, I had dreamed of him understanding. I thought if he finally saw me, the old hurt would loosen. But the letter did not heal. It only proved that recognition arriving after destruction is not love. Itis debris. I saved the image in a folder with the legal files. Not because I needed the apology. Because I wanted proof that the woman he underestimated had outlived the story he wrote for her. A week later, I stood on a stage at a community center on the South Side, facing 200 women who had come for the first Whitmore Foundation workshop on financial independence after divorce. Some wore business suits. Some wore scrubs. Some had babies on their laps. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed, too many looked like I had looked in my own kitchen, holding themselves together around an insult disguised as practicality. I did not tell them I was brave from the beginning. That would have been Allie. I told them I had made myself quiet for a man who mistook quiet for empty. I told them that financial control often wears a nice watch and speaks in calm sentences. I told them that love should never require you to become less informed, less named, less real. I told them to read before they signed, to ask before they trusted, to keep copies, to know passwords, to understand accounts, to stop apologizing for wanting clarity. At the end, a woman in the front row raised her hand. She was older than me, maybe 62, with silver braids and red glasses. "What was the first thing you bought after he left?" she asked. The room laughed. I smiled. "New locks." They laughed harder. Then I said, "And a better chair for my studio." When I got home that night, the house was lit. Differently. Softer in the halls. Warmer in the kitchen. Clearer in the studio. The old shadows had nowhere dramatic to hide. I walked to my father's portrait and touched the frame. The hidden door clicked open. For a moment, it stood between the studio and the secure office, between the girl who drew animals and the woman who moved banks. I closed the hidden door. Not forever, just for the night. Then I returned to the drawing table and wrote a dedication inside the new book's first page. For every woman who was handed crumbs and told it was mercy. The final divorce decree arrived 3 days later. Diane sent it with a note, clean. Complete. Done. I stared at the word done for a long time. Then I walked downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island. Morning light spread across the counters. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of landscapers beyond the gate. In that same room, Grant had tried to reduce my future to $2,300 and a signature by Friday. He had thought leaving me was the powerful act. He never understood that his leaving was only the door opening. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "All Mercer matters closed." I typed back, "Not all." He replied with a question mark. I looked at the foundation proposal on the counter, the children's book sketches beside it, the board agenda waiting in my briefcase, the locksmith's invoice, the bourbon glass washed and drying by the sink. I looked at the life that had been mine all along, patiently waiting under the life I had performed for someone else. Then I answered Marcus. "The next one starts today." Because my marriage did not end when Grant drove away with his mistress and my money. It ended years earlier, every time I swallowed the truth so he could feel tall. What began that Tuesday morning was not abandonment. It was a return. To my name. To my work. To my house. To the voice I had lowered for 15 years. And to the simple, unforgettable pleasure of never again pretending to be poor in power so a weak man could feel rich beside me.